Welcome back, everyone, to the show. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Attorney Russell D. Knight. Thank you so much, Russell, for joining the show today. I would like to introduce you to our audience. We are doing a justice series, and it's about international family law / family law in the United States. And this guest today is an expert. He's internationally known, and he has two practices, two law firms in the United States, one in Illinois and one in Florida. So, yes. Let me just introduce our guest to our audience a little bit before we dive into this new topic. Attorney Russell D. Knight is a seasoned family law expert with almost 2 decades of experience. He's as well licensed in Illinois and in Florida. He has a practice in Chicago and in Naples, and he leads the law office with exclusively the primary focus in family law. Russell's journey began in Prince Albert in Canada, and he moved to the United States in 1991, and he is now an international expert in, especially, as I said, family law, and has done hundreds of cases already. Yes, so he's deeply committed in family law and has written over 700 articles already about all kinds of topics, right? His insights have been featured in publications like the NBC News, Parents Magazine, and Newsweek. He is fluent in English, Spanish, as well as French, and he has a very international clientele. Beyond his legal practice, he is also very dedicated in continuous learning. He is always, searching and diving deep into his topics for his clients, and he's very committed to providing the best services. So thank you so much, Russell, for being on the show today. Would you like to introduce yourself also a little bit? Tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and what is your chat fuel for international family law?
Sure. My name is Russell Knight, and I have been a family law lawyer for 18 years now. I tell people that I wake up, I brush my teeth, and I divorce people. I've done it I speak a bunch of languages, so I've done it for international folks, whether they're from Latin America because I speak Spanish, or from Europe or Africa because I speak French. It's been an interesting situation because family law, as you know, is very broad, but it's not super deep. Like people got married, they had kids, they get divorced. But then if there's something broad that impacts that, like they might have gotten married in another country and we don't know if that marriage is valid, or they might have gotten divorced prior to that marriage in a different country and we don't know if that's valid. It makes things really complicated, and the world is getting more international, not less. And people come in with whether it's a prenup from a foreign country, and we have to figure out whether that's going to be valid in a divorce that happens in Illinois or Florida. And those are the things that sort of I enjoy. It's like my Sudoku puzzle to work through a family law issue. And when it's international, it's sort of at the hardest level. So I like to play it on the hard level.
Yes, perfect. So when did you first, start with the international cases? What was the, can you pick a certain case,
Oh,
very, very, very challenging, and what did you learn from that specifically for your clients?
well, the initial cases were, of course, like I started at a very small firm that serviced Latin American community in Chicago, and be very frequent that someone would show up halfway through the divorce that was happening in Chicago and say, "Oh, I already got a divorce in Ecuador." Surprise. And they would give you these documents, and then we would go to court and say, well, like maybe they are divorced, but anything that this says about uh, jurisdiction or property that's located in the United States, it shouldn't have jurisdiction, or we would do things like that. And the judges are nice people, but they don't know all these rules either, so you'd have to educate them. And meanwhile, you're dealing with a trickster on the other side who spent the weekend in wherever, and then he just got a divorce really quickly, and you'd have to unwind the divorce. But like the people are still get divorced. The question is like I don't really care about the rancho in Mexico, like who gets that? They can figure that out. But if there's a house in Chicago, I'm not going to let a order from another country impact that house or impact that value or the pension that the gentleman's receiving. So those are that's a consistent issue, is that people, when they don't like the way their divorce is going, they go to another country and see if they can't get divorced there. And it doesn't work. They think it can, but it doesn't.
Yes. So you already dived into the topic about today. So the topic is, do marriages and divorces, are they automatically recognized, right, internationally in other countries? or do you have to go through a certain, process, legal proceedings? So what I can speak of, just to give you a little background about Europe, right, especially Germany, where we have the headquarters, right? Between Germany and the US, there is a so-called, we have to go through, a legal proceeding in Germany, actually, to get marriages from the United States recognized. Well, they are internationally already valid, but we have to get them recognized. The same with divorce. And it gets really tricky when Germans want to also, get assets from the United States, right? From the spouse or from, want to reach any kind of those assets. So it gets really, really complicated. And usually what the German judge says, this is beyond my jurisdiction. We're not touching that. You have to, if you want to, you have to go do this in the family court in the United States, but then you cannot get divorced here in Germany, right? So there's always like this exclusive relationship. Either you get divorced there or you get divorced in the United States. So maybe you can tell a little bit about what is your experience in marriages and divorces when it comes to recognition.
Sure. So in the United States, there's not a general database of marriages, which there appears to be in Europe, because I get calls from people every week saying, how do I register my American divorce? How do I register my Italian divorce in America? And I'm like, there's no registry. The fact of the matter is like America it's not really a nation. It's a compact of 50 states that are all have an agreement. And those states do not handle their marriage at the county level. And so there's 1,800 counties. So if you want to find out if someone's already married before in a different county, you have to call up the county clerk. And there's like in Illinois, for example, there's like 30, I don't think there's 100 counties. So you have to call it up. It's impossible to figure out if somebody's really married in Illinois. But we will validate if you show up with a marriage certificate of any kind from a foreign country. Let's say like when people go on vacation to Jamaica or to Dominican Republic and they get married, and we say that's great, we agree with you, you are married. That's fine. We don't care if it was a real efficient or whoever it is. If you have a piece of paper that says you're married, we will believe you. So that's how you establish who's married. And the only thing that we do it leads into the next concept of divorce is whether there's comity. So if your laws are substantially the same as the laws in the United States, then we will say, okay, we will adopt it. And it's sort of a trial by error. So for example, if you're married, almost always, if Latin America, it's the same system. So we say you're married in Latin America, you're married in America. You're married in Europe, you're married in America. Some institutions in the Middle East, we say, well, we don't know because it's different. You might have had multiple wives and that might not be legit, or you might have married someone when we think they're too young. In our different countries, we won't acknowledge the marriage. And the same applies for a divorce, where the concept of comity is the same, but it's a lot tighter that way. So we will say you're divorced if you get divorced in, let's say, Ecuador, but we might say that the actual agreement about the distribution of assets or support, we don't think that has comity. We don't think that's approximately the same rules as what we have here in the United States. So therefore, we're not going to acknowledge those. And then it's interesting because you have to look at a series of appellate decisions to see if we have comity. And it only really matters if someone appealed it. So for example, Thailand, you think, oh, what do I know about Thailand? It's on the opposite end of the globe. We have in America, or at least in Illinois, you have absolute comity with Thailand. They have a very similar system, apparently. And so we acknowledge that. Same as Israel, even though they have, things are religiously based, we acknowledge their divorce system. And so you have the first test is it comity? And then and really the question is the country largely have the same values as our country? And for the most part, Western Europe and most of Latin America to some points, it's usually there's comity there. In any English speaking country, there's no question there's comity.
Yes, the same. We have the same concept that you just explained. So we have a lot of problems with like a lot of Arab-speaking countries, or like religiously Muslim-based countries. Like, as Turkey, we have a lot of problems with Turkish clients. They want to get divorced, and they say, "Oh, I'm already divorced. Like I don't have to go through the process," but they have to in Germany or in Europe. And also, of course, like Arab countries and African countries, they have to, again, because it's just not similar enough, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For European countries. And also we have Israel, is recognized automatically. We don't have to go through the process. We have a lot of problems with Indians and Pakistani. always, because they say that it's very different. In a lot of cases, there's is a religious, only a religious marriage or divorce, and they don't go through the governmental proceedings like the
That's
state,
right.
the law.
I'm
Yeah,
familiar with the Hindu divorce law. It's completely different than the Muslim divorce law, and they're all in the same country, and they have to acknowledge it. And
yeah,
so, yeah, effectively, they both handle different aspects of their divorce in each country. So there's two parallel divorces that have nothing to do with each other because India doesn't recognize anything. They don't get entered into any sort of treaties with anybody else.
yeah. Yes, exactly. So what do you tell a client that comes to you, an international client, right, and says, what country, what law applies to my case when he doesn't live in the United States? For example, he lives in Europe, right? What kind of law is applicable? Is it a place of marriage? Is it a place of residence or his nationality?
Well, it's almost always in the United States. It's where you've lived for, and it depends on a certain amount of time. New Jersey's the longest where you have to live 2 years in New Jersey. In Florida, it's 6 months. In Illinois, it can technically be literally a day, but it's preferred if it's 90 days. Depends how you want to read the statute, but will divorce anybody over here. You don't need to have any sort of special categories as long as you've been here. They don't check your visa. They don't check to see when you're supposed to go back. It's very loosey goosey. So anybody can get divorced. The real question is, if you have a divorce or any type of document, where do you expect it to be enforced? So if you have a piece of paper that says that you're supposed to get paid thousands of dollars, so that's great that you have the paper, but good luck enforcing that in a different country. I know, like I've had an English case, and they definitely enforce it without a doubt. And the government gives you a free lawyer to enforce it for child support. But in other countries, like it's just a piece of paper. You can't go to a court and enforce it there. You have to go back to the United States, Illinois, and then what can an Illinois divorce court do? They can say, well, he's definitely supposed to pay it or not pay it or what have you. But the most we can do is issue a body attachment, which is a civil order of arrest. But that civil order of arrest can only really be automatically effectuated in Illinois. So if you never want to be in Illinois again, you can just say bye bye and nothing will happen to you unless you're really smart and know how to register a body attachment in another state, which I've done a couple of times. But even then, I couldn't register a body attachment in another country. Maybe
Yes.
can using the same principles of comity, maybe. But I very much doubt that some foreign country is going to have its law enforcement go grab someone and throw them in jail based on a civil order from the good old state of Illinois.
Yes. Yes. Very interesting cases, right? You come across like because every case is different. It's not only the clients are different, the background, right? And you have like different assets in every case. So it's extremely like not only extremely challenging, but extremely rewarding also, right? Because when you get the divorce done and it's the people get to, close that chapter of their life, right? So because that's what they want you for, right? They want you to, to lead them through it, right, as the expert and, get out of it as fast as possible, right? But also to see, I also hired the best attorney for that, right? And you have the experience of that in two states, right? Which a lot of attorneys don't have. It's not. It's two very different states. Also, and the divorces are pretty different too, right? Because I can believe what I think the Chicago cases are different, very different from the Florida
Yeah,
cases. Not because of the assets, or maybe also, right, the assets, but also a lot of international clientele in Naples, right? Like, retiring people from, all countries of the world. And Chicago is more like, maybe younger people that get divorced, right?
that's true. It's more about people who are earning money in Chicago still. They have a lot, even if they're old, they're still working. And because
Yeah.
it's a very work culture where
Yes.
most of us are German Americans and it's people love working in Chicago. In Florida, they don't want to work. So there's only so much money. So if there's only $1 million, they want 501,000 because they need every last dollar.
Yes.
That's how Naples works. And in Florida, in Chicago, people are like, it's okay, I'll make more money. And but it's two different sets of international people because it's the people that come to Chicago are here to work too. Like they are here to make some money. The people that come to Naples are uh, they usually they married someone that's an American that has a lot of money. It's sort of a luxury community, and then they find out that that person that they married that they signed a prenup and they don't like it anymore, or they have issues with it, and there's a big uh, there's a very large uh, difference in power between the person who has all these assets and the person who came to live with them that really has not no assets, whether they have a prenuptial agreement or not.
Yes, yes. So regarding prenuptial agreement, would you like to explain a little bit more? Because we have a lot of clients coming to us that say, well, I don't need a prenup because, first of all, we're starting, right? We're young or we're already, no, we don't think about it. We don't need that, right? But I tell every client, no matter where they're coming from or no matter where they're living, they should always have a prenup, if not a postnup. Like they can still secure their assets or secure their position if they think about getting separated and heading to divorce, right? They can still get a postnup that is covering them as well,
Yeah.
but it's always recommended, no matter if they're marrying as students, right? And like growing together, or if they both come from very different places and, and combining their lives. What would you say about, how would you convince people to please get a prenup? Because it makes it not only
Yeah.
easier, but also, a lot better. It's not as chaotic that like a divorce can get
Yeah.
messy and chaotic if you don't have a prenup.
Well, the biggest problem is that, if you live in the United States, you don't know where you're going to live in your whole life. There's 50 different states with 50 different divorce regimes, and you don't know how your assets are going to be distributed or what the support is in the state you're going to be in. So you might be in Illinois, where if you are married to somebody for 20 years, you're going to have to pay them for alimony for the rest of their life. And if you might move to Texas, where the maximum is 3 years, and that's not out of your control. But if you have a prenup or a postnup, you can preset those things to say, well, I don't want to pay alimony for the rest of my life. And the other person's like, well, I also don't want to get it for 3 years in case we move. So let's decide on something else. There's also, I think it's very common with young people or with old people too, is that there's one person in the relationship is the ant and the other person is the grasshopper, I like to call it, where the person who saves money, that half of the money is going to become the grasshopper's money if there's a divorce. But the ant, the grasshopper, is never thinking about the future. So you can always convince a grasshopper to sign a prenuptial agreement because they're like, I don't care. Like, it's fine. Like, it'll be good because that's just their nature. So if you're a person who saves and you know you're going to save during the marriage, you can even say there's this one account, we'll call it the Russell account. And when Russell puts money in there, it always stays with Russell. And then there's the Russell's marriage accounts, all these other accounts. And if Russell puts the money in the Russell's marriage accounts, that money is divisible at a later date. And I think that's an excellent idea because it encourages people to save and it also sets boundaries of what's going to happen and expectations too. So no one gets caught unaware because it's very frequent. Again, the power differential, one spouse might have so much knowledge or sophistication that the other spouse might have no idea about what's going on. And even under the particular divorce regime, that spouse with all the knowledge might have an extreme advantage because they simply know when you have money in a bank account, there's not a database for it. You have to disclose it. And if you don't disclose it and someone doesn't catch you, you're going to have a hard time. The other side's going to have a hard time knowing it exists. So my point is that a prenup also can set down, this is what I own, this is what else I have. It gives a trail of breadcrumbs to be able to find out exactly what the parties own, what the parties have, and it sets expectations. Otherwise, the sophisticated person will start moving. If they know they're getting divorced in a year or two, they will start moving money around. And you're in good luck. And if there's any international aspect to that, good luck finding that money.
Yes, exactly. And also, there's always one person that's already planning to get separated and divorced. So it's never just like two people come together and then at some point they're both deciding doesn't matter, it doesn't work anymore. We're getting, separated mutually, right? Everything is fine. Like it's usually it might be a case, one or the other, but usually it's one already plans that, right?
Yeah.
For a certain time or has a new partner already lined up or is therefore has a certain motive, right? And you can only protect yourself when you do that right from the beginning. And also what a lot of clients do, usually a spender marries a saver.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, I really I never understood why, because you would just get married to someone that is very similar in your character and not the opposite, right? Because you would like you would like to, stay married for a long time, or that's at least the goal, right? Or you would get married in the first place. So why would you choose someone that is, the character of it doesn't really cover your traits? So that's a very common problem that we see, like a spender or saver, they get together, they have very different financial, motivation, or like a financial just mentality. And what we see, the biggest cause for divorce, I don't know, but you can also tell me about, your practice in your states that you practice, right? The
Yes.
biggest cause is, at least for European countries, is financial differences. It's not infidelity, the first
That's true.
position,
Yep.
and also not, okay, we have just different values in life. One is a religious person, the other is not, which is also a big problem, right? When you have kids and you want to raise them a certain way. But it is actually the financial differences, or changes in financial spending mentality. How do you see that? What is the biggest reason for divorce in the States?
I think it's exactly the same. It's financial infidelity is what I tell people. When one person breaks what the other person deems as a promise, it's often there's two types of it. The person who was making money is no longer making money, and the other person is deeply resentful for it. Or one person is spending money at a rate that the other person doesn't find appropriate, and then they initiate divorce because they think that's the value. I mean, the truth is, it's just either situation is unsustainable. Like, sure, you can get through a year of it, but could you get through 5 years of it? Like, if you're saving and working hard and then you realize you have nothing to show for it, that's a big problem.
So, and also most marriages we see, like the spouses live, before they get married, they live a long time together, right? Cohabitate.
Yeah.
As soon as they get married, the ratio of getting divorced is actually higher than when two people meet and get married in a shorter period of
Oh,
time.
really? Well, maybe.
So that's also very interesting, like psychologically, right? So when you would think like let's test this relationship and then get married, but it actually doesn't work because people get not really committed, right? When they cohabitate,
Yeah.
only they don't really commit. They have also always an easy way out. And the opposite is just getting married, committing fully, right? And then you cannot just leave, right? When you change your mind, you just have to actually work for it, right? So yeah, that was just a small side note. When clients, right, international clients come to you and they say, I want to enforce a divorce decree from another country here in the United States. What do you tell them? Can you help them in any way?
Yeah, typically it depends because it depends if we have jurisdiction. If let's say the person is over here and the person owes the other person alimony, then we have jurisdiction over that person. So we can say, you this French decree that says you're supposed to pay alimony, you have to pay it, and we will force you to do so. It's a contract like anything else. So you bring a contract here, it's fine. If it's that the person had to give over a house in France, we'll say we can't do that. We don't have jurisdiction over the house. So might have jurisdiction over you, but we don't have jurisdiction over the house. We don't have jurisdiction over a bank account in a foreign country. Anything that's physically or conceptually in another country, we don't have jurisdiction over. But if the person steps foot in Illinois or in Florida, we do have jurisdiction over them. And oftentimes you can throw them in jail until they sign whatever they need to sign to give you what you need from the foreign country.
Okay, so how often do you usually get those kind of cases? Is it very frequently? Because you're also fluent in English, Spanish, and French, right? So you can easily communicate with your clients.
Yeah, more than most people. I mean, Chicago's an international city, but it's not, I mean, it's not New York or Los Angeles, but it's still it's very international actually. So the issues do come up, but let's be honest, people that come to the United States or into Chicago in particular, they're here to work, and they're usually whatever life they left in their original country. There's not there's not a ton of assets. In fact, it's almost always the same story. It's that someone they both saved money and now they're in their 60s, and then now someone has bought four houses in Mexico, and they're all in their brother's name.
Yes.
And they're like, well, now I'm going to move back to Mexico, and their spouse is like, well, I'd rather have a washer and dryer in my house, so I'm going to stay here. And but I need to have half the value of those houses. And then the other person's like, well, they're not really our houses; they're my brother's house. And how are you going to value the houses anyways? And that's the beauty of Zoom. In the old days, we would say like, there's nothing we could do. we don't know what these are worth. What are we going to do? We can't fly up an appraiser from Mexico because we couldn't. Now we can just we can do a discovery deposition, or we can have the person testify through Zoom, and it doesn't cost anything more than it would to do like a valuing of a house here in the United States. So I definitely perceive that in the future, um, just as how Americans like to buy a second home in Florida right now, in the future they're all going to buy a second home in Latin America. It's just cheaper. It's cheap to live. It's safe. And if with all the technology today, you can be on a plane to an American hospital or talking to an American doctor within minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So another topic that we always get from clients, right, when they say, okay, they contact you or they contact us for certain family law related divorces, they say, how can my marriage, I entered this marriage or the other person entered this marriage fraudulent, right, with fraudulent intent. Or this person was not, or this person was forcing me to get married, or this person was, telling me something that was not the case. And I married this person because of certain reasons or because of certain, promises. How do you deal with it? Because it's obviously very, very difficult to prove that. And the plaintiff would have to prove, right, all these.
Yeah.
So what would you tell someone that says, I don't want to go through a divorce. I want to annul or,
Yes, we have the same concept of annulment, and it's very, very difficult to get. But because it's difficult to get, doesn't mean it's difficult to ask for. So follow me on this. People get married to people from foreign countries, and then they sponsor them to become
yes.
a United States resident. And once you are a resident, you are given a card that says permanent resident. The card might expire, but the residency never expires. You can stay in the United States for as long as you want. And they don't care how you got divorced. The only way they care is if they found that there was fraud as to the marriage. Now, like again, I said, America's not really a country, it's a compact of states. So if one of the states tells the federal government that's in charge of immigration that this was fraud, the federal government has no choice but to say, yes, this is fraud. So if you go to court and you can convince a judge that the marriage was founded in fraud, um, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. If the judge signs on it, usually by default, to be honest, then you can take that piece of paper, you can go to Homeland Security, and you can give them to them, and they'll look at it and say, if it says fraud, it's fraud. You're out of here. And what is that worth to the foreign spouse? What is the price of an American residency? Well, it depends on where you're from. If the price of American residency, if you're Canadian, it's probably not, $1 million. But if it's some war-torn country, it probably is $1 million. And so they'll do anything to just close out just for the mere chance that they might be found of having fraudulent. Of course, you can't file something when there's no evidence or no realistic allegation of fraud. But if there is, and it happens all the time, where people suddenly get their residency and they're like, "See you later," and they always seem to have. They're like, "By the way, my three brothers are going to visit me right afterwards." It's always a similar story. So you can threaten it, and you can kind of get what you want based on the threat. But if you really truly want to get an order that kicks someone out of the country, like it's probably not going to happen.
Okay, perfect. So just to round up this, this first topic, this first episode, right? Because our listeners want to always know about, what happens right now in the US. A lot of international people say, I want to come, I want to stay in the United States, but I'm afraid, right? What happens with the current, presidency? There are changes in the law. Are there, changes in the family law system coming as well? Regarding families, what happens to, when they overstay their visa, they get married, right?
Yeah.
If they ever get a green card, right? Based on that fraudulent, which is fraudulent, which is criminal, right? Because they overstayed their visa, they should not be in the country anymore, right? But they are still here. They have maybe kids with someone here.
Yeah.
How would you tell them, how would you tell them to get it right, to correct what they did wrong? Or how would you guide them if they have that problem that is, going on in their life now, and they build up their life in the United States?
Well, I know a little bit about this just because I speak different languages, and it's outside of the marriage. But if you marry someone that overstays their visa and they had a visa, that means the way they came into the country legally, you just need to marry them. They will give them a conditional residency almost immediately. They're like, we get it. You overstayed. You fell in love. It's no big deal. And it is not like that movie Green Card with Gerard Depardieu, where they take you into a secret room and they make sure you're really together. They don't care. I've been in that interview, and what the interview guys asked, the interviewer said, how do you I know you guys are a real couple? And the guy's like, well, she had my baby. And he's like, well, how do I know it's your baby? And he pulled up his sleeve and he's like, because I have his face tattooed on my arm. And the interviewer was like, that's enough for me. You guys are legit. So it's not, those people can get their papers fixed tomorrow and it's no problem. And then afterwards, they have a 5 year wait and they're a citizen and there's no possibility they could ever be deported, I think. But the people who come in without papers, they came in either like over one of the borders, there's no record of them having entered legally. They can get married to a person, an American citizen. The American citizen can file for a waiver which says, we know we broke the rules. We want you to give a waiver for breaking the rules because it would ruin my life if my husband was kicked out of the country. And I've seen many of these cases. I don't do the waiver personally, but the gentleman will meet an American girl or vice versa, and they will start a life and they'll have 10 kids and they'll realize, not 10 kids, they'll have a couple kids and they'll realize, oh my God, what if they got picked up? It would be terrible. And so they do everything they can to fix it. The person goes back outside the United States where they came from, has an appointment, and then there's a very tense meeting where they decide, well, are we really going to let you back in again or not? And if they let you back in again, then they came in legally, and then they can fix the papers just like I described in the first place. So most people who get their papers fixed, as far as I know, in the United States, when they didn't, if they immigrated here, the people become residents by marrying other Americans, as far as I've heard.
Well, as far as they contact someone like you, right? An expert that knows the law, that knows exactly what to do, and not someone that is, that trying to help them, right? Which is not an attorney that tries to help them in another way,
Yeah,
messes it up, right? Or
it's a
just,
disaster every time.
yes.
Even half the lawyers screw it up. So
Yeah, so it's super important, right? It's very helpful for clients to know first contact an attorney, right? Like you are in the two states. You even know everything also about other states. It's not that you just, you can just guide them about that specific jurisdiction of those two states. You can even, even if you don't practice in those other states, you can
mhm.
still tell them this is what's going on in the country, right? This is what you should look for, or you can, help them with all your advice, with all your experience. How can people find you if they say, okay, I have a case, or I know someone that needs to get a divorce or has a family law case? How can they find you?
If you look for me on my Chicago website, it's RDK, like Russell Dog Knight, legal.com. And then I've got my 700 plus articles that explain everything, and I mean everything, about how family law works in Illinois. I also have a website in Naples, but it's easier to reach me at the Chicago one, and they can call me or email me or do something through the website. I'm also very active on social media. Follow me on Instagram at Divorce Attorney Knight, or follow my Facebook page, Russell Knight, Law Office of Russell D. Knight, or my TikTok, Divorce Attorney Knight again.
Wow. So even on TikTok, which is like, it's a big commitment, right? To not only practice law every day, right, and be caught up with all these cases, but also to be, additionally on social media, because as attorney, we don't generate revenue, or we don't, this is not what we do, right? This is just additional advertisement, actually, right?
It just validates the fact that like you know what you're talking about. I know what I'm talking about. How does somebody who doesn't know us yet know that we know what we're talking about? So I talk about things that I'm educated on. I read every appellate decision that comes out of Illinois, and I once a week I talk about one decision. Usually because it's very dramatic. It's not really because there's a bunch of interesting legal stuff happening, but you just are shocked about the messes that people get themselves in, and I have like a pretty big following based on that. So
Okay, perfect. So, stay tuned for the next episodes, right? Russell will follow, and also will give us a lot of new ideas and advice. And join him, right? Join him and follow his social media channels. Get updated. And yes, thank you so much, Russell, for today.
cool.
And yes, talk to you soon.
Take care. All right. Bye bye.